I always thought I knew what love was. It's the kind of thing you grow up seeing in movies, reading about in books, and dreaming about as you lie awake at night. When I met Julia, I thought I'd finally found it. She was everything I wanted. Funny, smart, kind, and God, she was beautiful. The kind of beauty that made people turn their heads when she walked into a room. For years, I thought we had it all. We traveled the world together, built a life that felt solid, unshakable. But now, looking back, I can see the cracks. Tiny at first, almost imperceptible, but cracks nonetheless. And when the foundation starts to crumble, it's only a matter of time before everything comes crashing down. It started small, as these things often do. Julia had taken on a new project at work, something high profile and demanding. She'd always been ambitious, but this was different. Late nights at the office became the norm, and our dinner conversations grew shorter, more perfunctory. I tried to be understanding. I told myself it was just a phase, that things would go back to normal once the project wrapped up. But the project didn't wrap up. At least, that's what she told me. Months went by, and the late nights continued. She started taking weekend trips too, claiming they were for work. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the doubts began to creep in, slow and insidious, like a shadow stretching across the room as the sun sets. One night, after she'd left for another work dinner, I found myself standing in our bedroom, staring at her closet. Her perfume lingered in the air, a scent that used to bring me comfort but now felt like a lie. I'd never been the type to snoop. I believed in trust, in giving your partner space. But something inside me snapped. Before I knew it, I was rifling through her drawers, her handbags, looking for, I don't know, proof, closure, a reason to stop feeling like I was losing my mind? And then I found it. Tucked away in the pocket of her coat was a receipt. Not for a work dinner, but for a boutique hotel in the city. The date matched one of her supposed late nights at the office. My heart sank, a cold, heavy weight settling in my chest. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I let the knowledge fester, eating away at me from the inside. I began to watch her more closely, noting every inconsistency, every slip of the tongue. The moments I once found endearing, the way she'd twirl her hair when she was nervous, the way she'd laugh just a little too loudly at her own jokes, now felt like mockery. Like she was laughing at me, at my ignorance. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I finally had enough. She'd been texting someone all evening, her phone glued to her hand. When I asked who it was, she brushed it off, saying it was a colleague. But when she left the room, she left her phone behind. It was locked, of course, but I'd seen her enter the passcode 100 times. My hand shook as I unlocked it, scrolling through her messages. And there it was. His name was Mark. The texts weren't explicit, they were careful, calculated, but the intimacy was unmistakable. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing. You make me feel alive. My breath caught in my throat. I felt like I was drowning, the room spinning around me. I put the phone down and walked out of the house. I needed air, space, anything to keep me from falling apart right then and there. The next morning, I didn't go to work. Instead, I spent hours pacing the living room, rehearsing what I would say. By the time Julia came home, I was ready. "We need to talk," I said as she walked through the door. She froze, her eyes narrowing. "What about?" "You know what about," I said, my voice trembling. "I know, Julia. About Mark. About the hotel. About everything." Her face went pale. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she let out a shaky breath and sat down on the couch. I don't know what to say," she admitted. "How about the truth?" I shot back, my anger rising. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, then looked down at her hands. "A few months," she said quietly. "A few months?" I repeated, incredulous. "And you didn't think to tell me? To be honest with me?" "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I laughed bitterly. "Well, congratulations, Julia. You failed, because I've never been more hurt in my life." She started to cry then, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly drowned out by the wave of betrayal and anger crashing over me. "Why, Julia?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Was I not enough for you? Did our life together mean nothing?" "It's not like that," she said through her tears. "I love you, I do. But, I don't know. I felt lost, empty. And Mark, he made me feel alive again." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd given her everything. I'd built my world around her. And now, she was telling me that wasn't enough. The days that followed were a blur. Julia stayed with her sister, giving me space to process everything. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My mind was a whirlwind of memories and questions. How had we gotten here? Could we fix this? Did I even want to? She reached out to me a week later, asking if we could talk. Reluctantly, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop, the same one where we'd had our first date. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I'm sorry," she said as soon as we sat down. "For everything. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I want to make this right." "And how do you propose we do that?" I asked, my voice cold. "Counseling," she said. "We can go together. Work through this. Please, just don't give up on us." Part of me wanted to say yes, to cling to the hope that we could rebuild what we'd lost. But another part of me knew that things would never be the same. The trust was gone, shattered into a million pieces. And without trust, what did we have? In the end, I told her I needed more time. Maybe it was cowardly, but I couldn't bring myself to make a decision right then and there. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into work, into hobbies, into anything that would keep my mind off Julia and Mark and the wreckage of our marriage. But the truth is, no amount of distraction could erase the pain. It was always there. A dull ache in the background. A constant reminder of what I'd lost. And eventually, I realized that the only way to move forward was to let go. I met with Julia one last time, this time at our home. I told her I couldn't do it, couldn't keep pretending that things could go back to the way they were. She cried, begged me to reconsider, but I stood firm. For once, I put myself first. It's been a year since that day. I've moved to a new city, started a new job, built a new life. It's not always easy. There are still days when the memories come rushing back, when the pain feels as fresh as it did that first night. But I'm learning to let go, to forgive, not for her, but for me. And slowly but surely, I'm finding myself again. I'm discovering that love isn't about holding on to someone who doesn't value you. It's about valuing yourself enough to walk away, even when it hurts.